Hello, other Chris.
Hi.
What are you up to?
So we have just got a new CO2 regulator and CO2 cylinder, carbon dioxide, which is an essential part of us growing our seagrass. So seagrass, like all plants that live terrestrially out of the water, needs carbon dioxide to respire into oxygen. So we need to artificially add carbon dioxide to the water in order to allow them to photosynthesize, because it's a photosynthetic plant. It's a bit new to us, so we're having a bit of a play with it at the moment.
Yeah, so we've got our CO2 tank here, and we've got a regulator just to regulate the pressure that comes out of the tank, because obviously the CO2 is stored under pressure in the tank there. And the little bubbler here is showing us it's a physical, what's the word I'm looking for?
Bubble counter, visual indicator.
Indicator, yeah.
How fast it's flowing.
So at the moment you can see what let me think about 3 bubbles per second, and that in theory should be enough for this whole tank. And if you follow the pipe down, as Chris is pointing out, we've got this super diffuser, and you'll see the bubbles coming out of that are very, very fine, and that means that the CO2 diffuses into the water really effectively. It could come out in large bubbles, and that would just shoot straight to the surface, and it would still give a little bit of CO2, but not a huge amount. So this thing in theory should be way better. So we're hoping that our planted seagrass in here, which is actually doing pretty well. You can see there's a lot of other algae and stuff growing in there because we've got nice lights on the tank, and we just have to keep the blades of seagrass clean. And we're hoping that this CO2 will just help it and let it grow nice and healthily. Well, we'll see.
The advantage of this is that this whole setup is taking over from our homemade brew method, where we've been adding yeast and sugar together in 2 bottles,
like so,
which basically produces CO2 in that way. And although that's been working perfectly fine for a couple of months or so, this is a much more reliable, slightly more accurate way of putting CO2 into a tank.
Oh, there we go, there was a bubble there. So you can see it's not very controllable. What we can do, Chris, do you want to just give the bottle a wee shake? So if Chris just shakes the bottle, watch the bottle, there you go, big bubble. Wow, that was exciting, yeah. Anyway, anyway.
That's why we put a slightly more professional system on it.
It's fully controllable by all these little valves and whatnot. So fingers crossed, this will do away with our microbrewery effect over here, yeast and water and sugar. But yeah, fingers crossed it will help our seagrass to grow, which will end up in a tank, hopefully. Yeah. Today we are draining and removing some of the stuff from our, well, it used to be called the pipefish tank. It's now going to be, hopefully, our seagrass tank. So we've got some seagrass that we're growing on in a small tank in quarantine, and we're going to transplant it into this tank today. So what we need to do is drain the water in the tank, climb in, get some fake stuff out. I'm also finding, oh, there's a little guy hiding in amongst that, Chris. Some of these little dudes, you can see that on the screen. These are brittle stars. That's 2 species of brittle star there, a black brittle star and a crevice brittle star. They're very fragile, so you have to be quite careful with them. But as you can see, they can, they're horrible, aren't they? They can crawl around quite the thing. But we found,
to anyone with arachnophobia.
We're a bit worried that these guys will knock over the seagrass when it's first planted, so we're going to take as much of this out as we can, along with fake seagrass. And then we're going to add some new substrate, some new sand basically, and then we're going to transplant the seagrass that we've got into this tank, fill it back up and leave it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll start growing and take over the tank a wee bit, and it'll basically look like a lawn that you've not mown for a few months. It's going to be like long grass that gets up to about this kind of length, maybe even taller, and it's a really important habitat. So fingers crossed it'll work, and we'll have some nice living seagrass for you to see when we reopen.
Great, whilst Chris is guddling about in the pipefish tank and removing all the old substrate out of there and the old bits of weed and things, I'm through here at the ray pool, collecting some of the substrate out of the ray pool. We're just taking some, about a quarter of a bucket or so, which will help the seagrass grow, hopefully, in the new seagrass tank. Whilst he's at it, we'll put him to work and make him do some cleaning at the same time. There's no point getting in the tank and not cleaning it whilst we're still at it.
So as we said, we're going to remove our seagrass from our temporary tank, which is over here. And we've done that already. If you want to come and have a little look, we've got it planted in 3 of these white trays. So we've got some substrate in there. You can just about make out the sand. And then the seagrass, which are these green blades of grass, and they are very similar to grass you'd have in your lawn. And unfortunately, because we've been looking after it really well, we've got lots of CO2 in there, we've got lots of nice light for it, it's making other algae grow as well. I don't know if you can see, but look, this stuff here is a filamentous green algae, which is not supposed to be in the tank. So what we're going to have to do is clean all these bits off and remove them before the seagrass gets placed into the tank. So that's the job for today. Not really looking forward to it. It's going to be long and dull, I think. So, but hopefully it'll be worth it in the end. So, as I said earlier, this is the tank we're putting the seagrass into. So we've just finished cleaning it. We're going to try and put it in here. So I've had to climb into the tank. I feel a bit like a fish on display here. But we've drained it right the way down, so there's not much water in here, so I'm not getting wet. I'm going to put the seagrass, try and disturb it as little as possible out of the trays, into the middle of the tank, and then just push up the substrate around it, and hopefully that'll do. And in a few weeks' time, we'll see whether it's growing or not, so fingers crossed. Right, so that's us planted it in the tank now. As you can see, or as you can't see, it's very, very murky. If you just see on the top there, you can see some of the seagrass blades floating near the surface of the water there. So next step is to fill the tank back up, leave it overnight. The silt that's in there from me clambering around in there and from planting this plant will settle, and it'll be clear as a whiskey by tomorrow morning. And that's the plan anyway, so fingers crossed by tomorrow we'll know whether I've planted it in the right place. It's very difficult because it's so murky, but anyway, we'll see you again.
So here we have the tank the next day after Chris has put all the seagrass in, and you can see the tank is cleaned up nicely. Stickleback seems to be enjoying it, and there's the seagrass. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to monitor this quite closely and see how it goes with the CO2 system running and the new lights and things, and yeah, we'll keep an eye on it.